Next on Currents News, new comments from Pope Francis. He's speaking out in the wake of a call for his resignation. The story of what he said and why he said it is next. Cardinal Donald Wuerl's Mass is disrupted with a shout of protest. The incident was recorded as it happened in Washington, and the video is ahead. A major storm is set to make landfall along the Gulf Coast tonight. Hurricane warnings are out. Plus, one of New York's largest parades celebrates Caribbean culture. And before marchers get underway, they attend Mass in Crown Heights. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. New remarks from Pope Francis following allegations he ignored the sexual misconduct of Theodore McCarrick. Once again, though, the Holy Father is favoring silence as the best response. Currents News' Michelle Powers reports the latest.
As the Catholic Church continues to grapple with clerical sex abuse, Pope Francis says believers can look to Jesus' example, remaining silent in the face of opposition.
Non è facile quello che ha fatto Gesù, ma c'è la dignità del cristiano che è ancorata nella forza di Dio, che non hanno buona volontà, con le persone che cercano soltanto lo scandalo, che cercano soltanto la divisione, che cercano soltanto la distruzione, anche nelle famiglie. Silenzio e preghiera.
So far, the Holy Father has stuck with silence since allegations first shook his papacy just over a week ago. While the Pope was celebrating the closing Mass of his trip to Ireland, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano called on Pope Francis to resign, accusing him of knowing about the sexual misconduct of Theodore McCarrick with adult seminarians years before the abuses became public. He also accused Francis of ignoring sanctions Pope Benedict had placed on then-Cardinal McCarrick. All of these allegations remain unproven, and Vigano now says those sanctions were private, and neither Benedict nor he, in his role as U.S. ambassador, were ever able to enforce them. On the day of the publication of Vigano's testimony, reporters questioned if the allegations were true.
Attentamente il comunicato e fate voi il vostro giudizio. Io non dirò una parola su questo.
Delivering a homily at Casa Santa Marta in Vatican City, the Pope preferred to let the gospel do the talking.
Dire la sua e poi tacere. Perché la verità è mite, la verità è silenziosa, la verità non è rumorosa.
Michelle Powers, Currents News.
New backlash over Archbishop Vigano's version of a controversial meeting with the Pope held with Kim Davis. She was the county clerk jailed after she refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses in Kentucky. Francis saw her during his U.S. trip in 2015. Vigano said he properly briefed the pontiff ahead of time. Now, two former Vatican spokesmen are saying the Pope complained to Vigano that he never mentioned Davis had 4 husbands. Washington, D.C. Cardinal Donald Wuerl was interrupted by a shout of protest during Mass on Sunday. The former Pittsburgh bishop was mentioned nearly 200 times in the Pennsylvania grand jury report. Kim Hutcherson reports the cardinal was asking the congregation to pray for and be loyal to Pope Francis when the disturbance occurred.
Increasingly, it's clear that he is the object of considerable animosity. At each Mass, we pray for him by name. As we do so with our voices, so may we do so also with our hearts. Yes, my brothers and sisters, shame. I wish I could redo everything over these 30 years as a bishop, and each time get it always right.
During morning Mass on Sunday, Cardinal Donald Wuerl apologized for errors in his judgment, but parishioners say his words aren't enough.
I mean, if this is his statement, it doesn't really cover what was unveiled in the Pennsylvania investigation.
That Pennsylvania investigation uncovered more than 300 predator priests, credibly accused of sexually abusing more than 1,000 child victims since 1947. The grand jury's report alleges Wuerl failed to deal with the priests while he was bishop in Pittsburgh between 1988 and 2006. On Sunday morning, the cardinal called for transparency and renewed accountability. But as Wuerl pushes for engagement, parishioners are pressuring him to step down.
He should resign. Just because you didn't mean to do something doesn't mean that there weren't terrible consequences for lots of people.
I'm Kim Hutcherson reporting.
The Wuerl incident highlights tensions in the U.S. church after the grand jury report and revelations about ex-Cardinal McCarrick. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us now. Christopher, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Liz.
As you know, several American bishops and cardinals have spoken out publicly about the clerical sex abuse crisis, the allegations against the Pope, and by Archbishop Vigano. Some are backing the Holy Father, others support the former ambassador. Now, Christopher, is there a split brewing in the U.S. church?
Well, Liz, I wouldn't say there's a split, but what we've seen is certainly an x-ray of certain divisions that really have surfaced in the past 10 days or so. To date, by my count, we've had about a dozen to 15 bishops make statements in response to this 11-page testimonial from the former papal envoy to the U.S. And about 7 of those have come out backing the Archbishop's credibility, saying, you know, he is a man, as we know him, of integrity. Others, you know, including leading cardinals, Cardinal Wuerl, Cardinal O'Malley, Cardinal Tobin, all have, and Cardinal Cupich, have all said, you know, we have to walk with Pope Francis here and trust him. And they're the ones lending their voice to back the Pope here. I wouldn't say it's an out-and-out split, but certainly we're seeing these tensions sort of develop and seep to the surface. And all of that is probably going to really come to the fore in November at the U.S. Bishops' meeting.
Now, with all of that being said, there's a new report that these so-called sanctions against McCarrick were a private request from now retired Pope Benedict. If that proves to be accurate, wouldn't it undermine the Vigano accusation that Francis allegedly lifted those sanctions?
Liz, there's been a lot of discussion in recent days about what is meant by sanctions. Was this a formal sanction and decree handed down that actually has the teeth of canon law so that it has real church authority behind it? Or was this more of a private communication to say, there are rumors swirling, you should keep a low profile? No, we don't know that right now, and so that's what we have to get to the heart of. But if it is just a private sanction, now it really, in a sense, would have died with the Benedict papacy, because it would have been something that had been communicated informally rather than formally. And so that's what we're trying to uncover right now, is just how formal or informal these sanctions were. And so that's the task ahead of us.
Now, in another new development, Philadelphia's Archbishop Charles Chaput urging the Holy Father to scrap next month's big Vatican Synod on young people. We've been talking so much about this ahead of it. Instead, he and others are calling for this extraordinary assembly of bishops to focus exclusively on clerical sex abuse. What do you think is going to happen?
Liz, I don't think the Archbishop is going to have his way on this. I think the Pope sees the number of issues that are part of this Synod as pertinent. And I think sex abuse will come up, because I think a lot of people will say this is how we gain the trust of young people and the rest of the church, is to discuss it openly and in this forum, and we're going to have that Synod to do just that.
The Pope has laid a heavy charge on the media, right? He's urged reporters to investigate the Vigano allegations. He's pledging that until those results are in, he won't have anything to say about the charges. So what is the latest on that front that you can tell us about?
Well, it's been a whirlwind 10 days for religion reporters, and I think it's going to keep going. But we welcome that, the Pope's challenge. And so the latest in terms of where the Pope stands, we just heard earlier in the program, you know, he's made these comments sort of backing his silence in this. So I think he's going to continue to walk that line. However, there are rumors that there may be some more formal actions from the Holy See Press Office in the days or weeks ahead. And of course, we're still waiting to see when the Holy Father will meet with Cardinal DiNardo, the head of the U.S. bishops, and they will have their meeting together to discuss all of this.
Really quickly, Christopher, where do you as a journalist go from here on this story?
Well, I think we're continuing to investigate the formal nuncio's credibility on all of this, as well as the sanction question. So it's two-pronged at this point.
All right, Christopher, thank you so much. Always great
Thank
to have
you,
you
Liz.
here on set. Brett Kavanaugh's Senate confirmation hearing kicked off this morning in Washington. Kristen Holmes reports it was a contentious start with Democrats demanding an adjournment.
Mr. Chairman.
Fireworks on the first day of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee repeatedly interrupting opening statements of the committee chairman.
You're out of order.
What is the rush? What are we trying to hide by not having the documents out front?
Protesting missing documents and emails from Kavanaugh's tenure at the White House under President George W. Bush.
I ask for a vote on my motion to adjourn.
And demanding more time to review the 42,000 pages of documents released last night.
We're going to be in session Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till we get done this week. So however long people want to take, continue.
Protesters also seeking to disrupt the proceedings for President Trump's pick for the high court.
Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to have this loudmouth removed.
The tension highlighting the far-reaching implications of Kavanaugh's potential confirmation, replacing swing vote Anthony Kennedy and shifting the court in a conservative direction for decades. Democrats do not have enough votes in the Senate to block Kavanaugh's confirmation alone. The hope to appeal to more moderate Republicans to vote against the nominee. In Washington, Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
Former Arizona Senator John Kyle is headed back to Washington. The Republican will succeed the late Senator John McCain. Arizona's governor is appointing him to the post, but Kyle won't run for the office.
I've committed to serving at least through the second session of the 115th Congress. I do know I will not seek this seat in 2020 nor any other office in the future. I'm accepting this appointment to fill the seat vacated by the passing of my dear friend, because of my sense of duty to the state I love and the institution of the Senate in which I served for 18 years, and because the governor asked for my help, and because I'm putting my country first.
Voters will choose a permanent replacement in 2020. The storm, named Gordon, is intensifying tonight as it approaches the Gulf Coast. A hurricane warning is in effect for all of coastal Mississippi and Alabama. Omar Jimenez has the latest as landfall approaches.
Red flags flying, sandbags filling, and backyards clearing. All telltale signs a storm is coming.
So I just want to be sure I'm blocking off around the doorways and such.
After lashing South Florida with strong wind and heavy rains, Gordon has set its sights on the Gulf Coast. The storm could drop up to 12 inches of rain across the area. Governors in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana all declaring states of emergency and activating the National Guard. Louisiana closed several floodgates in preparation.
There's still a lot of work to be done in Louisiana. And there's an awful lot of folks who ought to be paying attention to this storm and making preparations.
In Mississippi, boat owners were ordered to remove vessels from the harbors in Biloxi and Gulfport because of the risk of storm surge. Homeowners there are also concerned about the surge.
You get to 6 and 7 inches of rain in Mississippi, then I'm going to look for water to get about 1 foot to 2 foot up underneath my house.
In Gulfport, Mississippi, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
Angry protesters clash with police in Rio de Janeiro amid growing outrage over a fire that destroyed Brazil's National Museum. The inferno gutted the 200-year-old building. The demonstrators are linking the blaze to government spending cuts. The museum housed 20 million artifacts spanning 11,000 years. The extent of the damage remains unknown. The Church of Annunciation in Finglas, one of Ireland's largest, will close forever next month. The building, which could hold 3,500 worshippers, will be demolished and replaced by a church with room for 350. Declining attendance and structural problems are behind that change. There's a lot more news headed your way. Brooklyn's West Indian Day Parade, the Caribbean culture and the Catholic faith together in Crown Heights. The Pope and the President warn of doom in Syria if a rumored attack is carried out. A booming business in Mexico is signing up people deported from the U.S. to help sell an authentic American product. And do you have a story idea? Something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We'll be right back. It dwarfs any other Caribbean culture celebration in North America. Eastern Parkway was jam-packed with color yesterday as the annual West Indian Day Parade marched down the streets of Brooklyn. Currents News' Katie Engesser has that story.
Caribbean culture is on full display during Brooklyn's West Indian Day Parade as colorful costumes and high spirits travel down Eastern Parkway. Along with the fun and festivities, there is a profession of faith. Parishioners of St. Matthew's Church, located along the parade route, marched while singing Caribbean hymns and handing out rosaries to people in the crowd.
I give out rosaries, I am praising the Lord, I am living for the Lord.
More than 1 million people lined the streets to watch the parade, one of the city's largest. The cultural celebration kicked off early in the morning with the Juve Festival, an event that has been marred in the past with episodes of violence. 3 years ago, an aide to Governor Andrew Cuomo was killed in a gang shooting crossfire. The pastor of St. Matthew's is Father Frank Black.
So whereas it is known for some not so nice things, we provide a part of the Caribbean culture, which is a culture of faith.
Before stepping off for the parade, Father Black led his congregation in Mass. The priest was born in Jamaica and said that Catholicism is ingrained in Caribbean culture.
The faith is not like an option in the Caribbean, it's a given.
Most of the parishioners at St. Matthew's were born in the West Indies. For them, the cultural festival on Labor Day would be incomplete without the church.
Well, I come here every year. I try my best to. This Mass is really to bless the parkway.
The West Indian Day Parade is one of North America's largest Caribbean celebrations and has been held in Brooklyn every year since 1969.
What a mighty God we serve.
In Crown Heights, Katie Engesser, Currents News.
It looks like a fun time. President Trump and Pope Francis are warning a pending assault on the last rebel stronghold in Syria would be catastrophic. The Holy Father urged nations to take action to avoid violence.
Rinnovo il mio accorato appello alla comunità internazionale e a tutti gli attori coinvolti ad avvalersi degli strumenti della diplomazia, del dialogo e dei negoziati nel rispetto del diritto umanitario internazionale e per salvaguardare le vite dei civili.
The attack would target Idlib province. The Pope said that would be a humanitarian catastrophe. The U.S. Commander-in-Chief is warning that hundreds of thousands of people could be killed in Idlib. Trump is telling the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad and his Russian and Iranian allies it would be a grave humanitarian mistake to launch an attack. The president fired off a tweet after Iran's foreign minister called for a purge in Idlib. Some 3 million people are believed to be living in that province. There are tensions at the U.S. border with Mexico over immigration, but that hasn't stopped an American businessman from opening a uniquely U.S.-style restaurant right in Mexico City. As Patrick Ottman reports, some of the best employees there are Mexicans who've been deported back home.
It turns out that selling authentic American barbecue in Mexico is a pretty good business to be in. 8 years after first opening their doors, Mexico City's El Pinche Gringo, that slang for darn American, has 2 locations, more than 50 employees, and loyal customers lining up for the tender ribs and brisket. Even in the era of Donald Trump and rising tensions between the U.S. and Mexico, the restaurant's American co-owner, Dan DeFossi, says he feels at home.
I've been so grateful in the last couple of years with all the rhetoric going on, all the things that I've never gotten anybody telling me, go back to the U.S.
But DeFossi said he has seen an increase in Mexicans who have been deported from the U.S. seeking work and made a conscious decision to hire them. So far, 7 deportees are on his staff. It's not charity, he says. The deportees are some of his best workers.
You know, sometimes I speak to them in English and they kind of have nostalgia for because they miss the United States, and they miss their lives, and they miss their family that still lives in the United States. So if we have a sanctuary, they appreciate that, and then they work hard.
One of those deportees, Hugo Hernandez, says he was deported following an arrest for a DUI and sent back to Mexico after a decade living illegally in the U.S. Coming home was not easy.
Your accent changes, and the way you behave, your culture changes, like everything, it's different. So they see you like you're not from here.
Changes that make finding work even more difficult. When people are deported, they often come back to a country they haven't been to in years, sometimes decades, and hardly even recognize anymore. One of the hardest parts about reassimilating is finding a job. DeFossi hopes he can inspire more kindness on both sides of the border, despite the current political climate.
I can't control what's done over there. All I know is that we have a little bit of barbecue diplomacy here.
Because just like making great barbecue, changing minds takes plenty of time and patience. Patrick Ottman, Mexico City.
Still to come on Currents News, the Pope receives a popular motorbike as a gift, but before Francis could hop on board, someone else drove it away. What's that about? I'll tell you after the break. Pope Francis has received many gifts. Heads of state, sports figures, religious leaders have presented the Holy Father with everything from personal mementos to priceless treasures. However, few presents will get Francis's motor running like the brand new, state-of-the-art custom scooter delivered to the Vatican's front door. Melissa Butts reports.
Not one single detail is missing from this Vespa, which has been totally personalized for Pope Francis. His initials, B for Bergoglio and F for Francis, the year of the Pope's birth, 1936, the date of the gift, September 2nd, 2018, and even the papal coat of arms and Francis's name written in silver letters are all included. The Vespa nel Tempo Club has donated this classic model, a 1971 Vespa 50R, to the Pope. It was personally taken to the Pope by those in charge of this club. The two also conveniently organized a fan gathering for this symbolic vehicle in Rome.
In piazza sono 600 loro, con le Vespe parcheggiate proprio in piazza.
The motorbike is a gift that this fan club has given to the Pope for the apostolic almsgiving. For this reason, the papal almoner, Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, was in charge of driving it away. Thus, he ignored their advice and committed a notorious traffic violation while inside the Vatican, not wearing a helmet. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Well, you make sure you always wear your helmet. That is Currents News. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.